Hello, everyone, and welcome to this latest trunk show as part of the Tour de Fabric taking place at quiltandlearn.com. It's wonderful to have you all here. It's a rather miserable day today in cloudy Oakland, although it's still pretty much an English summer still here, but definitely not an Oakland summer as we know it. In fact, I read the other day that it was the 17th coolest summer on record. I'm not quite sure when records began, but I think it was in the 1800s sometime. Anyway, we have four wonderful speakers and teachers with us today, four expert quilters who are going to talk to you about all their amazing quilting. We're going to start with Patty Klimek and then move on to the other three. And I will be sharing their panel pages, their teacher pages in the discussion as we go along. So keep an eye out in the chat as we go through for more information. I would also love to know where you are joining us from, so please drop that into the chat as well. All right, I think let me share the presentation. Here we go. Just want to make sure it's actually in slideshow mode. There we are. And I will hand you over to Patty. Away you go, Patty.
Well, hello, everybody, and thank you, Bee. I'm in San Francisco, which is across the San Francisco Bay from Oakland, where Bee is, and it is miserable out, believe me. But I want to introduce myself, Patty Klimek. I do the joy of handwork. I wear many hats in the quilting world. Primarily, I am a hand worker. I hand piece, I hand quilt, and I hand embroider when I embroider all my quilts. Yes, I do them all by hand. Also, I like to do sashiko. I've kind of fell into that. I call myself a crazy quilt artist. I do love crazy quilts. And you probably know me from my Japanese rice bag workshop. I hope you took a look at it. And I make a lot of those now. I'm kind of stuck on them. I also do a newsletter at Substack, which I'll talk about later. And also primarily, I am a teacher of quilting and I also do lectures. So I always like to start a trunk show by showing my two most significant quilts. Number one was my first quilt. I was a very bookish girl growing up, and I loved to read all of the serial books that were popular at the time, like, Anne of Green Gables. The Little Women series was one of my favorites, and especially the Little House in the Prairie books. That was by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And so when I was in my 20s, I found this book, American Needlework, by Rose Wilder Lane, who is Laura Ingalls Wilder's daughter. And inside of it, I found the directions for an oak leaf coverlet. And I took a look at it and I said, this is going to be my first quilt. I am going to do this applique with a swag border. I'm a beginning quilter, remember? Never did it in my life, though I sewed a lot. I did finish it, but it was pretty grubby when I was done. And well, if you look at the upper right-hand picture, you can see that I did my applique stitches kind of far apart. And after I washed the grubbiness out of it, my needle turn applique came out. And then if you look at the lower right-hand picture, maybe you could see the lines where I traced my pattern onto the muslin, but I used regular carbon paper that you use in a typewriter instead of dressmaker's carbon, and my lines didn't wash out. So this is the first quilt that went into the closet of no return, and I went on from there. My next most significant quilt, after many, many quilts after that one, and I've actually learned how to applique and learned how to transfer patterns properly, is this one. It's the Princess Feather quilt. It's one of my absolute favorites. It was juried into PIQF in 2019, and I was really lucky that it was hung right next to a judge's choice. um, uh, quilt. And at the time in 2019, I had a knee operation done, so I couldn't walk around a lot at PIQF. And there were some chairs that were set near that quilt, so I thought I'd sit down and listen to kind of the comments that people made. But it was not a good experience. I get in there, and this quilt is all at first, I want to tell you this quilt is all hand appliqued, hand quilted, and hand pieced. And people looked at it and said, you know, why do people really hand quilt anymore? And why would you want to hand quilt when it's much faster than a machine? Why spend all that time hand quilting and hand appliquing? And then the last one really kind of hit me, and I didn't like it at all. I said, you know, a long arm quilter would do a better job on this. And that really riled me up and spurred me on. I became a lecturer and wanted to remind people how much joy and beauty you could get out of doing all handwork on a quilt. Here you can see the hand quilting pattern that I did with some big stitch and traditional quilting stitches. And this is the center hand appliqued princess feathers. So I wanted to show you a couple more of my hand pieced and hand quilted quilts. This is called Dot and Stripe quilt. This is a pattern that I don't have the name of the pattern maker anymore. I bought the pattern probably 15 years ago, but I did want to show you the border that I designed and hand quilted. And you can see up here the hand quilting of the Baptist fan pattern. This is one that I just recently entered into our San Francisco Quilt Guild show in March. It's called the Nursery Rhyme Quilt. The pattern is by Ruby Short McKim, who is a very famous 1930s pattern quilting pattern designer. And I just love her patterns. They're kind of a really nice combination of Art Nouveau and Art Deco with a nice 1930s twist. And I was able to win a second place ribbon in hand quilting category there. Here's some more of my quilts. This one is hand embroidered, and I also did crayon tint embroidery on these squares. You can see the 4 seasons, bouquets, summer, winter, autumn, and spring. This is a Crabapple Hill pattern. I got these off the free website, which I think has been taken down because I think that she has now retired. Here is another, whoops, I went too far. Here's an example of the crazy quilts. I am a crazy quilt creator and designer. I did this during lockdown. When I started this crazy quilt, I really started embroidering it to show off my embroidery skills. But once we got into lockdown and I started working on it, I kind of had an epiphany, and I decided that this is actually going to be a quilt that shows the historical times, like most crazy quilts are through history. It's a picture of the time that they were made, and I wanted to make this the same thing. So you can see here on the left the picture of the coronavirus. I don't know if you remember seeing that on TV all the time on news reports. And of course, I put 2020 on there to establish the year. And it became a combination of very traditional Victorian patterns like the good luck horseshoes and all of that kind of stuff. But it was also a reflection of my garden, which actually got me through lockdown. So I have all of my plants. There's a picture of a cat that visits our gardens and takes care of the gophers. Oh, I'm there. And it was actually juried into the Stir Crazy Quilts exhibit in February 2023 at the Museum of the San Ramon Valley here in California. And you can see it hanging there. My friend Janet introduced me to sashiko about 5 years ago, and I fell very hard. I really adore the simplicity and the geometry of all the sashiko patterns of actually doing sashiko stitching. Doing the running stitch is just, I had embroidered for years and did all of these really elaborate stitches, and I just kind of wanted to do something simple, and that was the running stitch. This is a pattern that I made. I did myself and used Kumon patterns from the sashiko history. Then along with sashiko, I did something on the left here called a hanafukin. I've done tons of these. A hanafukin is a hand cloth that Japanese take along with them, because in Japan, in the restrooms, there are no paper towels. You take along a hanafukin, a little hand towel, and dry your hands on those. And I love doing dish towels. So boy, going into doing a Japanese hanafukin just was great. The center is an example of visible mending, which my sashiko skills were used on that too. This is a pair of my granddaughter's old jeans. I put a patch on her, sashiko patch on her knee, did some running stitch to do a little repair there, and then also applicate some of these sleeping cats on it. And then all the way on the right, you can see the Japanese rice bags that I have a workshop at Quilt and Learn that you can watch and learn how to make a Japanese rice bag. This is called the Shippo pattern that's stitched onto the side of one of those bags. Now, what I really like to do is make handmade quilts. And I was really lucky that I was chosen by Empty Spool Seminars, which is at LSMR in Monterey, for the 2027 group. And I'm going to have a week-long course on how to make a handmade quilt. I'm so pleased that they've chosen me to do this. I've done a lot of doing a hand quilting class and doing a hand piecing class and doing a design class for handmade quilts, but I've never been able to put all of them together. And this is really a thrill for me to do a whole week-long course on how to make a handmade quilt. So here's the sample of the quilt that I'm going to do. It's a takeoff on some quilts that were very popular 5-6 years ago from a New York exhibit called Red and White Quilts, Infinity, something that I can't remember right now. It's a whole bunch of red and white quilts collected by a New York woman who displayed them all in a beautiful setting in New York City. And this is different patterns that were taken from that course, or from that show itself. And here's a little picture on the left of the Asilomar Conference grounds that Empty Spools has. So that's it in a nutshell. And thank you very much. I'm Patty Klimek from The Joy of Handwork. If you'd like to take a look at my website, it's Patty, P-A-T-T-I-E, handquilts.net. My Instagram is #Patty, P-A-T-T-I-E, Klimek. And if you want to get a hold of me, I'm available on email. I can answer questions for you. Email, my name spelled differently, P-A-T-T-Y, 9308 at att.net. ATT doesn't believe in any other Patty spelling. And what I'd like to do is invite you to sign up for my weekly newsletter at Substack. It's Patty, P-A-T-T-I-E, handquilts.substack.net. It comes out every Sunday, And my byline is I always have an opinion. It's my opinions of the quilting world and hand quilting and handwork in general. So I'm done a little early, but I can take some questions if you'd like.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Patty. That was great. Yes, do please post any questions you have in the chat, and we can take them with members of the panel after each talk. Patty, if there's any come up for you, we can take them when Beth Ann has finished talking.
Okay.
I will hand over to her, and away we go on our next wonderful trunk show.
All right. Thank you, Bee. And thank you, Patty. I really enjoyed seeing your quilts. So much fun. And I love the handwork. Hello, everybody. I'm Beth Ann, and my YouTube channel, Beth Ann Quilts, is my newest baby. I'm a longtime quilting educator and designer and new-ish YouTuber who loves almost everything about quilts and quilting. And since I went more autobiographical last time for the Quilt and Learn Trunk Show, I thought I'd take a little bit different tack this time. And I wanted to talk about inspiration and share with you some of my inspiration for my quilts and hopefully, maybe trigger some ideas for you too. For me, the subject of inspiration, now not all my quilts are inspired by the same thing. And different sources of inspiration lead to different quilts. But one of my favorite sources for both subject matter and color palettes is the one I'm going to talk about tonight. I also want to share with you that inspiration doesn't need to mean literal. You have a camera for that on your phone. So we don't need to go literal unless you want to. It can still be an inspiration, even if nobody else understands the connection but you. Okay. Can you guess where I'm headed with this? I would imagine that this slide might have given it away that I'm talking about nature and finding inspiration from nature. This inspiration can take the form, again, of subject matter, color choices, or any other design element, including the quilting, although we don't have time to talk about that today. Here's an example of taking inspiration in a very abstract way. I've always been fascinated with photos like these from NASA, and those 3 photos on the side, I got those all from the NASA website. And aren't they amazing? From the earliest memories, I've always been fascinated by the night sky and by photos like from the James Webb or the Hubble telescope. And so that was the inspiration behind one of my very early Bargello quilts that I made like over 25 years ago, if you can believe it. It's been a hot minute, but that was my inspiration behind that quilt. And now from the heavens to the earth, a little contrast there. I live a short drive away from the beautiful shores of Lake Michigan. So that's a major source of inspiration for me, whether I'm making a commercial pattern like the first photo on this slide. I use the flabellum quilt pattern by Alex Hoffman and Alexandra Bordallo. Sometimes, even though I'm a designer, sometimes I just want to sew and not have to think about anything but the colors and the fabrics and just enjoy the process. And that's when I reach for a commercial pattern. And then the other photo on this slide is one of my own original little quilted landscapes, which is a technique that I teach. Oops, I went too fast. I'm going to back up one. Sorry about that. Here we go. Here's another one. We're still at the shoreline. And if you look at the photo, that is my husband, John, my key quilt holder. And if you look at the quilt photo, those are his feet sticking out underneath the quilt. And you can see the palette. I think I got the colors pretty bang on. I wasn't trying to be matchy-matchy, but the fabrics that I pulled from my stash ended up being pretty bang on to my inspiration of this particular spot on the Lake Michigan shoreline. And here's another one of my water, sky, and shoreline inspired quilts. And this is one of my original Celtic style designs. And now this is an example of when the inspiration is less obvious. Someone else looking at this might not understand where I was coming from, and that's okay. They can still enjoy the quilt. But for me, it was very much inspired by water, sand, and sky. The changing seasons in Michigan are another big source of inspiration for me. The varied colors of the falling leaves, and this is a photo from my front yard, inspired the color and fabric choices for this applique quilt. Now, again, I did not play the matchy-matchy game. If you look at the leaves and the colors in the leaves and look at the quilt, you notice that they're not exactly the same, especially because a lot of those fabrics are medium to large scale prints. A lot of them are William Morris prints, which are beautiful, multicolored prints. But they're definitely inspired by, my choices were inspired by, and I was trying to capture that warm autumn feel. And I hope I did. This is another one of my falling leaves, blowing and falling leaves inspired pieces. This is a curvy improvisational piece. I wanted to use the shape to create movement, while the colors of the fabric are meant to suggest that some of the falling leaves are still green. They're not all brown. Some of them are still green and young. And you may have seen this Bargello quilt before, which was inspired by a lovely October drive from northern Michigan back down to where we live in Grand Rapids. The beautiful, softly flowing bands of color that are created by the changing leaves in autumn, every time it takes my breath away, even after all these years. And so naturally, I had to make a quilt. And the photo in this case is a stock photo. All the photos in here I took myself, unless I say otherwise. This isn't otherwise. But I thought it was pretty close to my quilt. There we go. And in this case, the improvisational quilt in the center of the slide was inspired by a mix of memories of Michigan and also of the woods near my sister's home in Western New York. And I was particularly interested in the way that when you're in the woods and you look up, you can see the clouds in the sky peeking through the branches. Now, when I made the quilt, it was more fall, so I was kind of thinking more autumn and the leaves kind of disappearing, where these photos are a little bit earlier in the year. But I'm hoping you can see the inspiration of branches against the sky and seeing those silhouettes and the movement there. There we go. Sorry, I'm moving too fast on the, either too slow or too fast on the slides. I apologize for that. Okay. For this quilt, which I'm showing show up, I'm not showing close up. I'll get it out. Um, I'm not showing you the whole quilt, but I wanted to get really close up so that you could see the stitching. Because on this, I was thinking about the dunes near the lake and the woods near the lake, and how you can see pine needles and scruffy vegetation on the sand, and how light that the sand is sometimes. And that was the inspiration, both for using the spiky pineapple block and also for the stitching. I did feather stitching on the seams in a green thread that kind of reminded me of the pine needles. So, like most of my work, these aren't literal interpretations. They're to some degree abstract, some more abstract than others, but very definitely inspired by. Flowers are another very rich source of inspiration for me. And in this case, these are daylilies that grow along the wall at the back of our yard. And when I looked close up at the flowers, I was intrigued to notice that not only are there oranges and yellows and greens, which you would expect, but there's also a deep rusty red and a very deep reddish purple. And I was really intrigued by that. And so you can see the colors of the daylilies in the first quilt in this slide, even though the subject matter doesn't have anything to do with flowers. I was definitely influenced in terms of the colors that I used. And in the second photo, you can see a fairly literal representation of the daylilies. And that, by the way, was the sample from the January thread painting class. So you may have seen it before. And finally, if you watched my fabric postcards workshop, you'll recognize the thread painted tulip I have here. And here I combined a stock photo from Pixabay of a tulip with photos from tulips, again, from the back of our yard. And I kind of combined those two influences because I loved the gracefulness of the leaves in the stock photo, but I wasn't real thrilled with the tulip part, the flower part. And so I kind of mashed up those two influences to create my postcard. Now, what inspires you? And what will you make next? Are you inspired by where you live, or maybe somewhere you've traveled, or somewhere you'd like to travel? Isn't it fun to bring those influences into our quilts? It's kind of a way to hold all the memories and hopes. And if you're interested, I do have online classes at my shop.bethanwilliams.com. And coming up in August, I have Create Your Own Quilted Landscape, where we make landscapes like I showed you earlier. And I provide line work that you can use one of my designs, or you can use your own photos or inspiration. And then in September, I have a curved piecing for beginners and beyond. And then in also September and November, so they're separated, I have Free Motion 1 and Free Motion Quilting 2. And all of these are live Zoom classes, so I'd love to see you live on Zoom. But I know that that doesn't work for everybody. I'm in the Eastern time zone. You might be in a different time zone. You might be in another part of the world. You might have a busy schedule. So all the classes are also recorded so that you can watch them on video afterwards if that works out better for you. And finally, you can always find me on YouTube. I've got 50 some videos up there already and adding to them regularly. And I'm finding it's a really fun way to put information out for people and also to connect for people. So if you check it out, drop by and say hello. Thanks so much. And over to you, B.
Wonderful. Sorry, Bethan, I was fumbling with my video button.
That's okay.
Thank you so much. That was fascinating. Also, it's kind of amazing with your stitching you've done on the herringbone stitch. Was that machine stitched, that one?
Yes.
Yes, it's
Yes. I
beautiful.
used to do everything by hand, but as you know, I have multiple sclerosis, so I had to switch over to machine.
Yes, no, I totally understand. Siobhan is up next. Bethan, thank you so very much. That was wonderful. And Siobhan, I'll hand over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Siobhan with CDM 365 Studios. Primarily, I do modern quilts, and my favorite thing to do is rework more traditional blocks into something completely different. So my challenge for this trunk show is to try and do 10 quilts in 10 minutes and share a story about each one of them. So we're setting the timer and we're going to see how I do with this. So fingers crossed. Be going forward. It looks like we're having a slight issue with moving forward.
Sorry, Siobhan, the buttons were locked on my side as well for a moment there. Do you want me to move it forward? Would that be easier?
I think it's going to have to be.
Okay, no problem at all. You say the word and I will go.
Okay, next slide. Okay, so this first quilt is Jelly Roll Square, and it's basically my OG quilt. This one started because, you know, when you get into one of those slumps and you just need a project that is finished, something just to get you over that hump because everything else you're working on is something that's going to take weeks to do. This is that project. And it was part of a kit, and I had picked up the kit not even because I really liked the pattern, but because I liked the colors in the fabric. And started sewing strips together and was looking at them and decided I really don't want to cross cut them. I like them how they are. And that's how this pattern got started. And what ended up happening is I had the same problem that I'm told everyone has when they make this quilt. I then had to sort out all the other strips into the piles for how I wanted them together, which was probably the hardest part about this whole quilt. But once it all came together, it was a fantastic modern quilt. This is my go-to for gift giving. I have made so many of them. B, if you can hit enter twice. So here are two more examples, and it always looks different. So whatever fabric you use, it's one of these quilts that turns up differently every single time. It's always a wonderful surprise. Okay, next slide. So this is a fun one. This was a challenge for me to try and figure out how to use pre-cuts, in particular fat quarters. And I'm one of those people that I never like doing just one thing in a pattern. I like doing multiple things. So the rainbow quilts actually have two variations. There's the tiles and there's the mosaics. The tiles you can actually see was the original rainbow pattern. It's being held on its side. It should technically be the other way, but when you're fighting the wind on the beach, you hold it how you have to hold it. And this one's a ton of fun. It works perfectly with fat quarters, just 10 of them. And if you look at the middle photo, it actually combines the two, working with both the tiles and the rainbow mosaic. So there's a lot you can do with it. The rainbow mosaic on the other side is one that I did with Art Gallery Fabrics for one of their lookbooks. And it's a lot of fun. You get to mix and match colors, and that one can actually be done with fat eighths. So if you've ever wondered what you can do with those little fat eighth bundles, turns out you can do a mosaic quilt. Okay, next slide. So this quilt, you can't tell from the photo, it is actually bed size. It's summer starburst, and the whole idea for the design of this quilt was fun summer vibes. Just the 90s and sitting by the pool, loud colors, yes, as bright as you could be. The fabric in it is acid wash from Andover, which had the exact right feel. I absolutely loved it. And it came together so beautifully. And it's kind of hard to tell, but what I did is in the quilting, there are all little doodles. And I tried to do all little doodles like you would do on the edge of your papers in middle school. So there's stars and hearts and all different little shapes that are doodled into different parts of the quilt. Okay, next slide. This is Farmhouse Fields, and this was a fun prompt that I was given. The challenge was to come up with something that used rows. I've done, horizontal rows, I've done vertical rows. I love the idea of log cabins though, and you build rows with log cabins. So I paired the log cabins, which, comes along with the farmhouse idea, took those and went along with my tradition of using traditional blocks to mimic or represent other ideas. So in the center, there's a traditional block that has a few pieces turned, and that's the fields that are being plowed. Above it are the fences. To the side is where you're getting the start of all your cabbages growing. Below are the flower fields. All the reds are your apple orchards. Above is the lake. To the far left are the mountains. And at the bottom are the wheat fields. So again, it's all very impressionistic, but it gives you the idea. And again, it's a lot of fun to work with. Okay, next slide. This is a great quilt. It was a group project with quilters in North America and Europe. And if you're wondering why the gray color, this is one of those fun stories. Turns out quilt collections come out at all different times. I know the quilting is beautiful and it's very hard to see, but it's actually done in neon yellow and pink. So it's really, really impressive in person. And so obviously there's a lot more color in person than is really showing up on the screen. But so back to the story. Collections come out at different times, different continents, different countries. We were trying to work together with our two groups across two continents, and we couldn't find any kind of collection that was present in both that we could all see. So we decided to go then for solids. Well, then the problem with solids is you still have to find the colors in both places. Ends up going through this whole thing. Kona, turns out, is the one thing that's available all the time in North America and Europe. And the group we were working with in Europe had all grays. They could find all the grays in Kona. Not some of the other ones, but all the grays. And that's how we ended up doing the tone-on-tones in gray. So this one, depending on what you work with, totally changes the look on the pattern. So B, if you can hit enter 4 times, you can see how dramatically different this quilt looks depending on what colors are used and where they're placed. And it does work with patterned fabric. The top right is Under the Sea from Benartex, and that is all patterned fabric. So it gives it a whole other look rather than just doing it in the solids. Okay, next slide. So this is my prize winner. Modern Art working title, was in QuiltCon 2023 and won the first place in the negative space category. And yes, this is one of my favorites. I have so many stories for this one, but the big one I'm going to go with is, if you look, it's not a distortion in the colors. The colors are actually an off-white and a dark chocolate brown. And I had wanted these colors because I didn't want the stark contrast of black and white. I wanted to have a slightly warmer colors for what I was doing with my artist statement. I couldn't find it in any of my local quilt stores. I looked. I had to order it online. The fabric got back ordered. So I'm coming up to the point where I really have to start quilting this. I don't have the fabric. So I go to another quilt store and I end up having to get the black and white fabric to make the quilt. Well, thankfully, when I came back the next day, the fabric that I actually had ordered arrived and I was able to use the chocolate and the porcelain that I wanted. But the black and white that I had purchased actually makes the back of the quilt. And B, if you hit enter again, that's a close-up of the quilting. This was all done free motion, very long time. It was like rowing mud doing it. But the great part about this is it was designed to look like a canvas. And so you can see kind of how this mimics the lines of canvas. And if you look closely, you'll see how there's some brown and some cream coming through. It was a multicolored thread, and it worked perfectly to show brush strokes. Okay, next. This is another fun one. This was inspired by a tile pattern. It comes in like 3 sizes. And the small one, again, I did in conjunction with Art Gallery Fabrics. It's their Juniper collection. And the larger one is all out of my stash. So I honestly can't tell you what fabrics it is. But it's a great pattern, and it was the first one I designed to be put together on point. So a lot of fun, and it was very interesting figuring out how everything went together. Okay, next quilt. So this is my cover girl, Down the Shore. And I don't know if there's anyone in New Jersey in the chat group watching, but you all know that it's always down the shore. Doesn't matter if you're going north, it's still down the shore. So you can see the photo inspiration. And I use primarily pinwheels and hourglasses in all different sizes to create this effect. And this was so cool to see how everything came together. There are about 6 shades of blue in that quilt. And they were all used to just create that effect of everything going out. Okay, next quilt. Okay, hit enter 3 times. The photo shows a spot from Prince Christiansen Sound in Greenland. And that's what inspired this improv quilt. If you hit enter again, here's the finished quilt. This was part of a year-long course I did with Nicholas Ball. It was absolutely fantastic. And it's one of the first times I've done a major improv work. Lots of quilting on it and lots of other work, but tons of fun and all hand-dyed fabric. Not my hand dyeing, but all hand dyeing. Okay, next. And this is my favorite quilt right now. It's my love letter to Iceland. It's Fire and Ice. If you hit enter, I think 3 times. These are all pictures of Iceland, and you can see part of the inspiration for this. This quilt drove me a little nuts making it. I pulled it out many, many times. But I am so happy with how it finished looking. And that's going to be coming out later this month. I actually only got the approval to show this last week. And that is 10 quilts in 10 minutes. If you hit enter B, these are just a few more of mine, so you can get an idea of what I did. Oh, and the one on the left is Final Frontier, which is the sew along I am hosting. If you hit enter again. And this is my contact information. You can find me at my website, www.cdm365studios, or on Instagram at createdesignmake365. And thank you, because I know I went a little over on that.
You're good. You're good. And you had to cope with me. I was getting so enthralled. I kept forgetting to press the thing when you said next slide. I was like, oh God, that's me. So yes, you did very well. And I'm sorry that the technical wasn't on your side here. Well, that was fantastic. Thank you, Siobhan. I am currently thinking about going to Iceland later this year, and so I was quite intrigued to see those pictures there. But I'm going to hand over to Susan. Susan, thank you very much for joining us, and you should have click control, and away we go.
I don't have it either. I don't know what happened.
What has happened?
It was there for earlier and it's gone.
Wait, did I stop sharing? No, I'm still sharing. I am screen sharing. Okay, why has it gone away? Slide control. Oh, here we go. There we go. How's
I
that?
got it. Yep.
Got it.
I
Okay.
got it back.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Okay, so here's my crazy self. So pretty much I enjoy fun things and I enjoy bright colors and lighthearted things. So this picture was one of my favorites because it just kind of says everything about what I want Studio 708 to be. And here are my crazy kids. So a lot of this is the reason, I don't want to say the reason why I do things, but to be able to include them and they help me and they do different things. So just wanted to share them really quick. Just a little bit about myself. Fabric has always been something I love. I have always been the person that has to go touch and feel. And as a little kid, my mom was always telling me to stop touching everything, and I couldn't do that. Color is a huge thing. I know I'm wearing black and I'm wearing black today, but color is a huge thing for me, and that's what inspires me the most. So, and we talked about a lot of inspirations tonight, but color of anything, if I like it, then I can build something around it, and that's one of my favorite things. I'm a very technical person. So although I like to have fun and do all these things, I like things to be precise and I like things to be in order, if that makes sense. I am a trained fashion designer. So I do pattern making for clothing. That's what I've done for a living for years. And right now, currently, I manage the production at a factory in San Antonio and we manufacture men's clothing. So I do a whole lot of stuff with fabric and always have. It's just in different areas now. So I read B's email and had to laugh because I am totally a tie-dye fanatic. And when I'm not just in black being professional today, this is usually what you can find me in is some kind of tie-dyed something or enough because I love all the color. And this isn't where I started quilting, but I want to say this is where some of my bigger things are, or where I started with my bigger things. I never bought a quilt pattern. In fact, I couldn't have read one, and I don't necessarily speak the quilt language. I'm better now, but I didn't then. And these were quilts that I saw different places, or patterns that not patterns, but quilts that I saw out and about different places and fell in love with the design and recreated them myself. And all of these, of course, are very scrappy fabrics that I pulled out from whatever I'd collected them from. The one on the right is the plus and the X quilt, and there's a lot of snowballed corners in that. So that left me with a lot of scraps. And like many of you, I don't like to throw fabric away. I don't like to get rid of it. So you'll see the pillows in the background here are using some of the scraps for that. And I think, yeah, here's a close-up picture of it. So with this, I took all those little triangles and laid them on top of each other and then just ran a top stitching down it so that I could use that. And it's turned into this really fun, sort of fringy looking, but it's all triangles out of the many, many, many ones that I did not want to throw away. The quilt, I'm going to back up one second. This one right here on the right hand side again, this one was, I decided to wash it because I decided that I wanted it to look all fringy and stuff. Not something I would recommend. That was a nightmare trying to clean up all the little threads and to try to get it all pressed back into place. But it was all fun, a learning experience and fun time to play. This was another one that I saw people doing Barzello quilts and thought, I can do that. So I'm just going to cut one up and just go for it. So I don't know if any of you have ever tried this, and some of the previous speakers tonight have talked about Barzello quilts, but there's actually a pretty good trick to it that you need to sew in different directions to keep them from skewing out different things. So I had to go buy another jelly roll to finish this out because I messed it up and didn't want to have to take it all apart. But these were a lot of fun, and I love all the colors in this and how you can build like waves or whatever it is, the landscaping that you're trying to follow. This one is the first one that I did a quilt pattern for. So this is one of mine. This one's in the quilt pattern bundle. This is Tranquil Buzz. It's relatively simple quilt to sew, but what I like about it is, for one, you have the way to blend the fabrics and do the ombre colors of fabrics, but I really love the secondhand design in there of getting the circles and the way that the movement's going on within the quilt. This one is what changed my quilting life. I had been seeing like 2020, like we've been talking about, where everybody kind of had to like reevaluate their life. I started looking at these quilts and I kept thinking, how in the world are these people doing this? This is amazing. Like, I don't know how they're sewing this because I'm just thinking of machine piecing. And I am just blown away by what they're doing. Well, I finally found this pattern. This one is actually a Tula pink pattern, the Tula Nova. And I used Allison glass fabric. So I know I've kind of mixed all these designers here, but I started piecing it. And of course, you start in the center and work your way around. And as I was going, I was like, this is like the best thing ever. Like, I love how I can make things match exactly. I get things where I want it. I'm hand doing it so I could take it places with me. And this method changed everything for me. So this is the Castle Garden quilt, and this is part of what my class is about within the Quilt and Learn community. What I've done is I did this pattern for Andover. So the Libs Elliott Amsterdam and the Renee Noneman of Needle Love. These fabrics will be out in October through Andover. The middle one is the original one I have that's also behind me on the wall. But what I liked about this that Siobhan talked about too is how much the different colors can really change the quilt layout. And even if you just rearrange these again, how different they would be from what they look like right now. So come on, slides are going a little slow. There we go. So I liked that design so much that I've taken this again and I actually expanded it out. The lower right-hand corner is the original Castle Garden design, and I have taken this and just made it bigger. So the first one was originally about 42 by 42. This new version is close to 62 by 60, just so I could get more colors in there. The great thing about English paper piecing is you can just keep building out. Like, you don't have there, I guess you can do that with any quilt, but you don't really have to stop. You can just keep going. You can make it however big you want it to be. But this one is the expanded version, which is not available yet, but should be soon. One thing that I like to do when I do English paper piecing is to quilt or to piece my sections. So a lot of people will do things and build, just keep building and end up with a big quilt that they've got in their lap as they're working on it. So throughout my process, what I do is I build little sections and get each design set and ready to go. And then at the end, I sew those sections together so I don't have to have such a big quilt in my lap all the time. And these little sections, I can take different places and travel around with them. And so I don't have that much with me at one time. So you can see in the center picture that I'm kind of laying out my design as I go and thinking about where I want the different designs to be. And then different sections of that quilt out on the left and the right. And then, of course, my little tub that I take around that has it all kind of set up and ready to roll. So because I grew up in the fashion design world, but fell in love with English paper piecing and actually foundation paper piecing, I am now doing clothing patterns for shirts like this that you can put in your own designs. So you could take this and put in any kind of piecing that you want on those borders. And the shirt is kind of nice and loose so that it fits majority of people, but you're able to put your own creativity on your garment. This one is another one that was made for the Andover fabric that'll be coming out in October. So I started with this houndstooth quilt idea and made the quilt, and then had to immediately turn around and cut it apart, which, you know, kind of hurts your little heart whenever you've worked so hard on something. But the end result was worth it because I have a zipping around town pullover jacket from this that is kind of lightweight. It has side pockets and it does not have, what was I going to say, heavyweight batting in it. So I'm from South Texas, so the last thing I want is something really heavy. So this one for me, I made it pretty lightweight so you could just throw it on and go. So this is it for me. This is where to find me, and we have different supplies on the website and different things, but you can find me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And that's it. B, thank you.
Thank you so much. My cat has just started meowing in the background, so I'm hoping she doesn't give us a little soprano solo while I'm talking. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much, Susan. I am a huge English paper piecing fan myself, although I must admit I still haven't gravitated to glue pen, but I see those so tights in your box, and that's definitely where I'm at. Yes, I hope everybody watching enjoyed all of those presentations, all four. Shush, woman. And I hope you'll join us for our future trunk shows, and of course go to YouTube to watch all the ones that we've already had. All right, thank you so much to our panel, and I hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Thank you. Bye.